Okay, so what do we do when we buy a brand new bike? Well, when we buy a brand new bike, we bring it home and we start dreaming about all the parts we're gonna put on it. Now, if we've been wanting to buy the bike for a while, we've probably already dreamt about the parts. So this right here is a 2019 CRF450l. However, this is my brother-in-law's new bike. Now, with the whole COVID thing in Washington, we had this deal locked and signed for about 4 weeks before we could actually go pick it up, which was, you know, depending on your take, that was a little ridiculous. Let's go get our bike. This is how we social distance. But anyway, so since he had all that time before he had the bike, he spent his time between my bike and browsing the internet, dreaming up all the stuff he wanted for it. Between picking it up and now, he's been going through and putting all his parts on, and I think you'll agree this bike looks fantastic right now. But one of the other things we do with a bike is we ride it, right? We ride our bikes. Not in this case. We haven't actually ridden this bike at all. What we've been waiting for is he ordered the San Diego Powerhouse Kit. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to actually be tearing down this brand new motor with a whopping 0 miles on it. It's only been ran to prove that it actually starts before leaving the dealer. We're going to put the Yoshimura Exhaust, the Vortex ECU, the thermostat delete kit. We're going to put a new camshaft in, new rockers, and new valve springs. Some of this I've never done before. In theory, at the end of this video, this bike's going to start back up. So hopefully that's the case. So anyway, thanks for checking out this video with us. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and let's start tearing apart a brand new bike. Okay, so real quick, just so you can kind of get a visual of everything. Yoshimura parts, we've done a previous video on the channel for that. Vortex ECU, here is the cam. It's kind of happy to see on here that the decompression, what do you call it, kicker, I believe that's what that part is, but it's already on there, so we don't have to start over. Picked up a valve shim kit because I'm assuming that our clearances could change with a different part, and we don't want to have to sit here and wait for more parts to be on order. You got your valve springs in here. The kit comes with all the gaskets you need. Here is the thermostat delete kit. And I think that's about it. We've got stuff on the table, torque wrenches, tools, just trying to get everything going. So one thing's cool that he has on here, since we're gonna have it all apart, and I don't have it on my bike and I might, is Vortex sells an optional switch. So by default, what it is you've got a map 1 option. So when you flick this switch, it goes to map 1 no matter what. Now for this programming, that is the Yoshimura Exhaust. If you have the FMF exhaust on here, what you'd probably have to do is lean this out, because when Vortex and everybody does the programming, they're assuming that you're running the Q4 with a quiet tip. So anyway, but in this case, he's running the Yoshi, and what he can do when he flips up to this switch is then it will run whatever map we're pointing to. So we're gonna run the Enduro map. So as he flicks his switch, you'll have the baseline power map or the Enduro map running on here. I will also say that getting this from San Diego Powerhouse, they have reprogrammed this for the cam. So this is different than just your standard Vortex ignition. This has been further customized to map what we've got done. Okay, so there is a brand new piston. Check that thing out. That is clean. Now, granted, this bike runs solely in stock. It probably would never look too bad. We've got the cam chain pulled off tight. Okay, so there is the head. So we've got our exhaust, or no, sorry, this is, I believe, the intake part where the cam sits, and the cam rolls across. So when you're checking your clearance, your shims, you've got a clearance right here, and at the cam, and your exhaust is a little easier. You only check the clearance here. So we'll get that all the way. Now here's something I wanted to point out. So check this out. So here on the right is the stock cam. Now here is the San Diego Powerhouse cam. And you can visually see that higher profile on that cam. It is just a visual standout. So that's why you need new valve springs, because we are pushing that so much tighter on here. Now, by pushing it harder on here, my understanding is if you were to use the stock springs, they may not push back fast enough, and you could actually get what's called valve float at higher RPM. So you need stiffer valve springs to prevent that from happening. So in here is the Tusk valve spring compressor tool so that we can get those all out. So now, in theory, you just, really easy, just swap the valve springs, put it back together, and away you go for a ride. But we'll see if it's actually that easy. Okay, so we've got our tool together here. We've got the valve spring presser pushing. That was the second to largest size on the Tusk. And now we're compressing down on the valve until we get the spring compressed. I can see it shrinking down. And then once it frees it up enough,
it on that run.
Okay. One valve spring. Okay, now let's take a look at the kit and see the different replacement parts. Okay, so this is kind of nice. So we've got part out of the old one, and then as they send them, the intake and exhaust are wrapped separately, and they're wrapped so now we can know, which direction they go in, top versus bottom. Looking through the kit, I don't see any new keepers. I mean, this bike's brand new, so we'll go and reuse those, not worried. Maybe we're missing them. If we don't find them, I would say so as a note, if you're doing this, to go ahead and order 4 more of those. But like I said, this bike's brand new, so we'll keep moving forward. I don't have enough hands to film and do everything, so we're gonna, one at a time, we're gonna replace the parts, put the new in, and then we're gonna come back, and we do have to replace the rocker arms for the camshaft. So here's the new ones that came there as well. Okay, so we've got all the valve springs in, looking good there. So now we've got these rockers there labeled left and right, pretty simple. And while if you're doing the exhaust side, you would thread in a bolt, the intake side slides right out. So we'll go ahead and get these assembled together. Gonna put a little assembly lube in these gaps right here. And then once we put it together on the new camshaft, we're gonna put a little assembly lube and all the parts that touch. And then there's like we're just gonna pour a little bit of oil over the top of everything as well, once we've got the shims checked for their space. Because again, I'm expecting the shim stuff to be changed, but we'll see, maybe not, that'd be great. Okay, so now we are on the reassembly process. So we've got probably gone through like 30 pull ties between tightening chain, cutting it, tightening it. But anyway, new head gasket came with it. We put that on. They included a new cylinder gasket down here. We didn't put that on because again, this bike hasn't really been ran, but it does come with it if you want. So now I'm just gonna go through, tighten all the head bolts down. I do have a service manual, so I get those torqued to make sure if you're ever taking apart something like this, those need to be torqued in an alternating pattern. You don't just go 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like hop around. Anyway, all right, so we'll get the head torqued down, and then we got to put the cam in and check the shims to see if we got to change that around. So honestly, once that's done, the rest of this should go together pretty quick. So still got the goal, looking forward to hearing this thing and firing it up and see how she runs. Okay, so we are in the reassembly phase. Valve cover head back on. We did have to change the shims. On the right side exhaust changed a little bit. It was a 13 and 12 was the maximum. The 13 was really tight, but it was still in, so we lowered that. And on the intake side on the right with the new rocker valve, I had to go a little, it was too tight, so we had to loosen it up. So now we're gonna go through and get this all buttoned up. Now, this kit does come with the San Diego Powerhouse thermostat delete. There's all kinds of connections you have to do. We're gonna do a separate video on my bike later down the road of installing that, because I got one for my bike too. And since this bike was already torn to hell, it's kind of almost cheating to install it now. So I wanna do a video later of what it's actually like to install it from scratch, starting lickety-split first part. So for now, we'll keep putting this back together, and we'll touch base with you guys when she actually looks like a bike again. We're actually having a birthday party here. 793 is 10. Oh, this is so everybody's hanging out. We're trying to finish this bike. Delete kit's installed. Handlebar switch plugs into one of the spare cables coming out. Lights everywhere. He's getting excited to start it. Before we button her up all the way, we want to make sure it runs. So Dan, this is all you, man. This is your bike. There's no warranty on this work. Here we go. Woo! Yeah. Airbox lid removed. Let's button her back up. Okay, so now it's time for the break-in ride. So we're gonna throw the GoPro on Dan here, and we're gonna go for just a soft ride. Nothing crazy here. Probably look to get about 100 miles on it before he really romps on it with all that extra power. Let everything break in well. But let's go get a first ride in, get some initial impressions, and then we'll be back to see what he thinks. It cut out! Okay, so we were about 8 miles into the ride. We did the rider swap, and then the bike, as I was riding, died, lost power. It was very much like turning the ignition off. You just wasn't there, pulling the clutch, goes away, let go of the clutch, and it's just going down. So we thought, okay, maybe a wire was loose, maybe something was wrong. So go back, get the truck, bring it back here, tear it apart. And what had happened was, and this is human error, this is our fault here, the cam had slid a little bit out of its holder. So there's little grooves on the cam guides that hold it in place. And this has nothing to do with the San Diego Powerhouse Kit. If you change your own shims and do everything, you're touching this part. And so I don't know if something got more finicky or what, but the cam had slid out of there. It had rubbed things a little bit, like around the decompression valve on the side of the holder, put a little bit there. You just saw no like metal chunks, no fragments, nothing crazy like that. We didn't gouge everything, but the cam shifted over, and as it spun, it just rubbed some spots it normally doesn't. So we've got it back together. The first time I put it back together, it popped out again. So these, I either need to replace the guides in the holder or not, but we put it back together very carefully. Now it's in, the bike started. So we're gonna put the GoPro on Dan, go for a quick ride at night, and then we'll just keep riding it. So thankfully, we're kind of at the point, if it fails, it's gonna fail in the head. It's not gonna fail anywhere else in the bike. We know what's wrong. So we're just gonna go ride. We think we got it. So here we go. Okay, so that obviously didn't work, so we'll be back later. Okay, so we are on day 2. The bike failed last night again. So when we got out here, the bearing right here was out laying out here again. And so I found an article on Vital MX where a guy was dealing with the same thing on his 450R, because again, these are the same engine designs. The cam bearing slides here and it slides here. And so when you put that holder together, you need to be pinching the bearings in all the way. Now, we don't technically have the cam chain tensioner tool, and I think that is what caused the failure all along to a degree. Human error if this ends up fixing it, but because one person's holding the cam chain tensioner, you know, and another one, and then we're trying to rock this in. When we were rocking the cover in, things had to rock around a little bit. And I noticed before the cam had just an itty bitty little play, it would move. Well, I thought that play was why these bearings slide on the cam. Well, right now it's solid as a rock, it's not moving. Because so what we did this time, just to be completely safe, is we had one person squeezing the bearings in, and then the cover dropped right on. And it's hard to see here, but this bearing is sitting inside of the holder. And then on the cam chain side, the bearing is sitting buried in here. And so I believe that's it. And so now we were just cranking it over. It's not moving, it's not wiggling. It appears to be in here solid. We've got the top torqued. The next time we have it apart, we're gonna get the new guides that roll here. But unfortunately, since there are no guides on the bottom, the guides only exist on the top. We obviously aren't the first people to experience this, and we won't be the last. So if you're working on I don't know when this design changed. It's different in the 06 we had. Never had this problem on the 06. But from at least 2017 or newer Honda 450s, be very, very careful that you are sitting inside your guide here. Otherwise, you're going to have the exact same type of thing happen. So the only thing we can really see that's happened right here is when the bearing popped out, the cam moved a little bit this way. And so your decompression rocker was out and it was rubbing right here. But it's more visual than anything. You don't really feel a groove in here, and all the other guides look good. So we've got her oiled up. We'll put it back together and see if that solves it. Okay, so I'm not even sure where we're at in this point between the filming clips where we got stuff filmed, not filmed, etc. So let's just try to take a clear mental picture. We got the bike fixed, so everything's working now. So this was not a San Diego Powerhouse problem. This wasn't, you know, technically a Honda problem. This was a user problem. This is a user error. We're not the first people that this has happened to, nor are we going to be the last people this is going to happen to. So hopefully our little bit of an error here is useful for anybody who ever has a 450 this engine generation, because you're going to have to at some point take that holder off and change your shims. It's just part of the regular maintenance of the bike. So make sure you squeeze those cam bearings all the way in. That's where they go. Okay, so what do we think about the San Diego Powerhouse, right? That's what this video is supposed to be about. Pretty damn cool. So right now though, because we were using a bike that is brand new, not broken in at this point, we're up to about 30 miles on the engine, no wide open throttles yet. I limited myself to about half open runs, and compared to my bike right now, you definitely feel that it wants to just carry that front end a little bit lighter. It's a very smooth, usable power. And one of the things I'm thinking on here without looking at a dyno chart is when you looked at the cam lobes, the exhaust lobes were very tall. Those were very tall profile. And when you're actually talking about exhaust, my understanding is the more back pressure, the more exhaust restriction leads to more torque in simple general terms. So my thought is on here that with really tall exhaust lobes, a lot of this power is going to come in the all upper RPMs. And so it's really going to be usable for either, I would think, deserts, dunes, Baja racing, or pavement. Pavement, you're absolutely going to be able to use it all out. If we go to a track, we're not talented enough to use it there. A lot of looser dirt riding conditions, not talented enough to use it there. So what I really liked is the fact he had the Vortex switch on the handlebars. And so when you switch that over to what we had for mode 2, much easier roll on, much smoother throttle application. And so I almost looked at that switch as the mode 1 pavement, mode 2 dirt. That's the simplest way to look at it. I'm gonna play with my bike more and see if I want to add something like that too, because regardless, even my bike, even though I don't have this extra 11 horsepower, it's still a hell of a lot of power. So I might be doing something like that too. So overall, if you're looking for more horsepower out of your 450L, you don't mind tearing it apart, and you don't mind, presumably, we're just guessing here, a little more maintenance down the road, yeah, go for it. It's actually really easy to ride. I thought it would be too much, but no, it's actually a very, very rideable bike. It does well, and it's a pleasure to ride. So from here, once we get the bike broken in, yeah, we'll do some drag racing. We'll go find some roads to kind of test it out and see how big of a difference in bike lengths that power makes. And then one of the things we're kind of curious on here too is my gas mileage already took a crap, so is his going to be even worse? So I've got a follow-up gas mileage video to make of stock versus modded. I haven't done the modded leg, so now when we go to do that, he's going to come along with us. And so we'll see where that ends up. But I think for some of the longer rides we got planned, I think at some point you're going to see an IMS tank video install on this channel, because right now my miles per gallon dropped about 10. And so I'm thinking I'm going to hit 70 miles or so before my fuel light comes on. I'm guessing he's going to be around 60, and that's kind of annoying. So that's not very much riding. So I think we're going to increase the tank too. So, all right. Hopefully this video was both useful, entertaining, and somebody along here learned something. And if we just prevent one person from screwing up on their cam, then hey, that was worth it too. So glad we could share this experience with everybody. Thanks for watching, keep riding, and we'll see you next time.